This is Somjaja Nair, your online biology tutor. In this video, we are going to discuss about some events in human reproduction like fertilization, implantation, pregnancy and lactation. In previous videos, we already discussed about the human reproductive organs, gametogenesis and menstrual cycle in females. Fertilization and implantation. During copulation, semen is released by the penis into the vagina and this process is called insemination. The motile sperm swims rapidly, pass through the cervix and enter into the uterus and finally reach the junction of isthmus and ampulla, and this junction is called ampullary isthmic junction of the fallopian tube. The ovum released by the ovary is transported to the ampullary isthmic junction where fertilization takes place. Fertilization can only occur if the ovum and sperms are transported simultaneously to the ampullary isthmic junction. This is the reason why not all copulations leading to fertilization and pregnancy. The process of fusion of a sperm with the ovum is called fertilization. During fertilization, a sperm comes in contact with zona pellucida layer of the ovum and induces the changes in the membrane that block the entry of other additional sperms. Thus, it ensures that the only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. The secretion of acrosome helps the sperm enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucida and the plasma membrane. This induces the completion of the meiotic division of secondary oocyte. The second meiotic division is unequal and result in the formation of a second polar body and a haploid ovum, and this haploid ovum is called oocyte. Soon the haploid nucleus of the sperms and that of the ovum fuse together to form a diploid zygote. Sex of the baby. The sex of the baby has been decided at this stage itself. The chromosome pattern in human female is XX and that in males is XY. Therefore, all the haploid gametes produced by female ova have the sex chromosome X, whereas in male gametes, sperms, the sex chromosome could be either X or Y. Hence, 50% of sperms carry the X chromosome while the other 50% carry Y chromosome. After fusion of male and female gametes, the zygote would carry either XX or XY depending on whether the sperm carrying X or Y fertilize the ovum. The zygote carrying XX would develop into a female baby while the zygote carrying XY would form a male. That is why scientifically it is correct to say that the sex of the baby is determined by the father and not by the mother. Development of zygote. The mitotic division starts as the zygote moves through the isthmus of the oviduct called cleavage towards the uterus and forms 2, 4, 8, 16 daughter cells called blastomeres. The embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres is called a morula. The morula continues to divide and transforms into blastocyst as it moves further into the uterus. The blastomeres in the blastocyst are arranged into an outer layer called trophoblast and an inner group of cells attached to trophoblast called the inner cell mass. The trophoblast layer get attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as the embryo. After attachment, the uterine cells divide rapidly and covers the blastocyst. As a result, the blastocyst became embedded in endometrium of the uterus, and this process is called implantation, and this implantation leads to pregnancy. This is the diagrammatic representation of fertilization and implantation happening in human female. Here you can see an ovum and sperm fused together to form a zygote, and the process is called fertilization. And after the fertilization, the zygote mitotically divide and form blastomeres, and then the blastomeres will become morula, and further the morula will become blastocyst, and then the blastocyst travels from oviduct to the uterine wall and it gets implanted in the uterine wall. That process is called implantation. There it will develop into a baby. Pregnancy and embryonic development in human females. After implantation, finger-like projection appear on the trophoblast called chronic villi, which are surrounded by uterine tissue and maternal blood. The chronic villi and uterine tissue become interdigited with each other and jointly form a structural and functional unit between the developing embryo or fetus and maternal body called placenta. The placenta facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the embryo and also the removal of carbon dioxide and other excretory or waste materials produced by the embryo. The placenta is connected to the embryo through an umbilical cord which helps in the transport of substances to and from the embryo. Placenta also acts as an endocrine tissue and produces several hormones like human chronic gonadotropin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, progesterone, etc. Hormones produced during pregnancy. Human chronic gonadotropin HCG, human placental lactogen HPL produced by placenta, and relaxin which is secreted by ovary are produced in the woman during pregnancy. In addition, during pregnancy the levels of other hormones like estrogens, progesterone, cortisols, prolactin, thyroxine, etc. are increased several folds in the maternal blood. Increased production of these hormones is very essential for supporting the fetal growth and metabolic changes in the mother, and this is very necessary for the maintenance of pregnancy. Development of embryo. Immediately after implantation, the inner cell mass or embryo differentiates into an outer layer called ectoderm and an inner layer called endoderm. A mesoderm soon appears between the ectoderm and the endoderm. These three layers give rise to all tissues or organs in adult. It needs to be mentioned here that the inner cell mass contains certain cells called stem cells which have the potency to give rise to all tissues and organs. Development of embryo in different months in human beings. In human beings, after 1 month of pregnancy, the embryo's heart is formed. The first sign of growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope. By the end of the 2nd month of pregnancy, the fetus develops its limbs and digits. By the end of 12th week, the first trimester, most of the major organ systems are formed. For example, the limbs and external genital organs are well developed during this stage. The first movements of the fetus and appearance of hair on the head are usually observed during the 5th month. By the end of 24th week, that is the 2nd trimester, the whole body of the fetus is covered with fine hair. The eyelids get separated at this time and eyelashes are also formed during this time. By the end of 9 months of the pregnancy, the fetus is fully developed and is ready for delivery. This is the pictorial representation of the human fetus within the uterus. Paturation. The average duration of human pregnancy is about 9 months, which is called the gestational period. Vigorous contraction of the uterus at the end of pregnancy causes expulsion or delivery of the fetus. This process of delivery of fetus or childbirth is called paturation. Paturation is induced by complex neuroendocrine mechanisms. The signal for paturation originates from fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induce the mild uterine contraction called fetal ejection reflex. This triggers the release of oxytocin from the maternal pituitary gland. Oxytocin acts on the uterine muscle and causes stronger uterine contractions, which in turn stimulate the further secretion of oxytocin. This stimulatory reflex between the uterine contraction and oxytocin secretion continues, resulting in stronger and stronger contractions. This leads to the expulsion of baby out of the uterus through the birth canal, or called paturation. Soon after the infant is delivered, the placenta also expelled out of the uterus. Lactation. The mammary glands of the female undergo differentiation during pregnancy. and starts producing milk towards the end of pregnancy by process called lactation. This helps the mother in feeding the newborn baby. The milk produced during initial few days of lactation is called colostrum, which contains several antibodies absolutely essential to develop resistance of the newborn babies. By this we have come to the end of this chapter. Now let me summarize all the topics we have already discussed in this chapter. We started with reproductive organs in males and females. Then we moved towards gametogenesis. The gametogenesis in males called spermatogenesis and in females it is called as oogenesis. Then we spoke about menstrual cycle in females. Then we talked about fertilization, implantation, pregnancy and lactation. Thank you. In the next video we will be discussing about the next chapter, the reproductive health.